this province. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is no time to be dramatic. We've heard of some unbelievable cases. We've heard of an unfortunate suicide. We've heard of young people coming home and refusing to go back to school. Those are issues that have to be addressed. Teachers are asking for help. They're asking for direction. They're asking for support. And they're turning to this Department of Education and this minister. We don't need window dressing. We need real assistance. And that assistance revolves around one key factor: the size of classes in junior high. The size of classes in junior high is a crucial issue, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you from personal experience, they will say this class is 38 in size. I, Mr. Speaker, at one time had a class of 41. You don't prepare one lesson, Mr. Speaker. You don't have one outcome in that class. You usually have 3 or 4 lessons that you've prepared. You, after all, have one for your teaching assistant, and thank God they're there. You have one for the students who are what we call the middle of the road. The high achievers, they got to survive on their own. Some of the kids that really need the help that we as professionals want to assist, we don't even get to them. But in the middle of a class of that size, some of the tension, some of the discipline problems, some of the concerns that are forthcoming. You know, Mr. Speaker, I am proud to say that my first teaching job, as you well know, was at Dorchester Penitentiary. Dorchester Penitentiary was a maximum penitentiary at the time, and I was in my first year of teaching. And I will tell you that I, on many occasions, was put, and you know from your experience in the Spring Hill situation, you're put in challenging positions. Perhaps not as challenging as Dorchester Penitentiary was in the early 70s, and that wasn't yesterday. But I know there are teachers, and I know there are young people in this province who are in threatening situations in schools and in classrooms as I speak. There must be leadership from this government. There must be leadership from this particular minister. I look forward to working with him, as does the parent of this young man who wrote that very touching poem, The Invisible Man. And I thank her for allowing me to use that. I encourage the minister to follow up. I will provide the parent's name and her address. That's the sort of one-on-one contact that we need when it comes to this specific issue. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Speaker.
Now, member for Sackville-Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take my time on debate going into supply to talk about the people and places that I represent. I want to, first of all, follow up along the lines of the member for Timberley Prospect started out talking about the good work, the hard work, and the dedication of people in his community through homeowners associations and various types of organizations, and the work that they do to help further and improve their communities. Many of you would know that I've spoken before in this House about the vibrant, growing community that I represent, the fact that I believe it's one of the fastest growing communities in Atlantic Canada. It's a young community. It's a community that's progressive, that works to improve itself through a variety of means, through service clubs, through various homeowners associations, recreation associations, and that type of thing. And I'm going to take a bit of my time to talk about that community that I represent and those communities that I represent, and take this House through a bit of a geographical tour. Mr. Speaker, I happen to represent the community of Upper Sackville, and Upper Sackville was famous in Nova Scotia for having hosted probably the worst run landfill in Atlantic Canada. And for 2 decades, that community was the place where all of Halifax took their garbage and dumped it. The people of Upper Sackville put up with what was described as the worst run landfill in Atlantic Canada, maybe even beyond, for 20 years. And for 20 years, they sat there and had their community devalued and had their properties devalued and saw a diminishing quality of life through the negative consequences of having a landfill in their backyard. But they stuck together, Mr. Speaker, as a community. They formed an association, the Sackville Environmental Protection Association. They fought then the Metropolitan Authority and subsequently the County of Halifax and then Halifax Regional Municipality to find a successful closure to what was the worst run landfill in Atlantic Canada. They were successful in that because they worked together as a community, they stuck together, they had a common goal, and they achieved that goal. Now that community, Mr. Speaker, took what was a tremendous negative, a huge negative, that negatively affected not only them but their neighbors, and it spanned out probably a 2 to 3 kilometer span. In fact, some would say that the stigma of hosting a landfill actually expanded to all of Sackville, parts of Lucasville, Hammonds Plains, and the surrounding communities. But they took what was one of the biggest negatives that they had to face as a community and turned it into a tremendous positive. Mr. Speaker, they were able to convince the powers and the authorities of the day to enact legislation that enabled the Metropolitan Authority, who was the body that was responsible for operating that landfill, to compensate that community for its negative effects that landfill had on the community. They were able to take that compensation and translate that into real, genuine, positive change. And being somebody that spent a great deal of time and effort and energy in that community from an economic point of view, I was a real estate agent, I know only too well the positive outcomes that community had as a result of the compensation that they were able to earn as a result of that very negative landfill. The community took that compensation, provided real and genuine improvements that have enabled that community to become a more vibrant and active community. They spent some of that compensation on community facilities such as soccer fields, baseball fields, community halls. They improved not only the makeup and the infrastructure of that community, they improved the environment, because they also took a great deal of that money and invested it right back into the environment where it came from in the first place. Some of the projects they undertook saw the rehabilitation of some of the Sackville rivers and watersheds, and frankly, the benefits of that work will extend well beyond this generation and into future generations. And because of that hard work of dedicated, hard-working volunteers, the community of Upper Sackville is now a vibrant, active, growing community where people want to live, where people enjoy living, where they're able to access community services right in their community. And frankly, those people have done a great job to turn what was one of the biggest negatives into a tremendous positive. Now, some of the money that they received for compensation, they invested in their public service. They took some of that money and invested in fire service. One of the things that they did was they purchased a new rescue vehicle to be used in the Upper Sackville Fire Hall. I want to report to you, Mr. Speaker, that unfortunately that fire hall has been closed for about a year and a half. It's an issue that has been growing in terms of importance in the community. Halifax Regional Municipality was forced to temporarily close that fire hall as a result of mold and mildew and structural issues. However, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the municipality has not taken the initiative to reopen that fire hall. A recent fire in the community left the house completely devastated with a 9-minute response time. And I want to encourage Halifax Regional Municipality to do the right thing, to reopen that fire station, to provide the level of protection that community deserves. Mr. Speaker, they've invested in that fire station with their own hard-earned money. They put their own time in, and they deserve and expect the kind of protection that fire station provided for 25 years and now no longer provides. So I'm encouraging Chief Mike Eddy and the Halifax Regional Council to do the right thing, to reopen that fire station, provide the right kind of protection to those people in Upper Sackville that they so rightfully deserve. Mr. Speaker, I also want to talk about a number of other initiatives. Springfield Lake Recreation Association is an association that has been founded probably 20 or 30 years ago, that has grown exponentially over the past couple of years. They host a lot of community events there. They provide programs for young people. They provide an opportunity for residents to get together and to meet on a regular basis in a hall setting to help foster the sense of community that has established them as one of the most vibrant communities. It's an area that has seen tremendous growth in the past year to year and a half, and it's a sought-after area in Halifax Regional Municipality of which to live. It's an understanding thing to know that people are spending literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for a piece of land to build a house in that area, because that's a community that has bonded together to improve their own their own neck of the woods. People like Andy Conrad, who is the executive director of the Springfield Lake Recreation Association, has done a tremendous job, him and his volunteers. And I spoke in a resolution today about Brian Bailey, who received a lifetime award or lifetime membership to the Springfield Lake Recreation Association. People like Brian Bailey and Andy Conrad and others have done a great deal to improve that area of my constituency that I represent. And without their hard work and their effort, Mr. Speaker, I would say that a lot of the community would be a lot less than it is today. I also want to speak a little bit about the schools. The member for Prospect today passed me a book by Bill Giroir. It's called Acadian Awakenings. And Bill Giroir was a principal at Harry R. Hamilton School for a number of years. And Bill Giroir no longer is a principal of that school, but his commitment and dedication to that community continues. He's visited that school again since his retirement on a number of occasions. Bill was very instrumental in a number of projects that moved Harry R. Hamilton Elementary School from an average school to a superior school. They've been recognized nationally, internationally, and across this province for their work in the environment and for their work with respect to peace in the classroom. I want to also point out a vice principal, Hetty Adams. Hetty Adams is a leader in peace initiatives in this country, and has, I think, Hetty is responsible for the League of Peaceful Schools. She does a great deal of work, and she actually taught and was the assistant principal at that school for a number of years. And during her time at that school, she began devoting a great deal of her time and energy towards peace in the classroom initiatives in the League of Peaceful Schools. And we were very thankful to have Hetty as a vice principal at that school. Moving down the road, Mr. Speaker, I moved to Millwood, which is probably one of the youngest and newest communities that I represent in the part of Sackville, the Sackville part of my riding. Millwood has been was a project that had been developed by the Department of Housing through the province of Nova Scotia to provide affordable housing to Nova Scotians. It's the area where I first settled, Mr. Speaker, in terms of my own first home. It gave me and my family an opportunity to build a home and to live in the community where I was born and raised, and it's done the same thing for a great many other people. In fact, you'll find that housing turns over very quickly in Millwood. People move to Millwood, establish roots, establish community ties, and then move to other parts of the community as they progress with their family. And it's a very vibrant community that is a very active and involved community. Many of the people who live in Millwood are involved in community sports and organizations, the many churches and community associations, community service clubs that exist in Sackville and in the surrounding communities. And it's because of the community of Millwood and other communities and the people who live there that we have such a vibrant and active community. I want to as well talk about my neighbors, Mr. Speaker, Lucasville. Lucasville is a community that has existed for well over 100 years, a couple hundred years. They're a very spiritual and vibrant community that has just recently seen a tremendous amount of growth. Lucasville, for the past 50 to 75 years, probably never saw any more than 5 new homes constructed in that community. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have a new subdivision in that area that has literally hundreds of houses under construction, lots of new growth, and it's a vibrant community, Mr. Speaker, that has a great deal of community involvement. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that the community of Lucasville is a front runner in terms of dealing with its own economic development. As many people would know, that economic development is not, I would say, the overwhelming pressing issue in the community I represent. It's not a pressing issue because, frankly, the vast majority of the people I represent are well employed. The unemployment rate in our community is at probably an all-time low. We have what I would describe as the opposite problem as many areas of the province of Nova Scotia. In fact, a lot of the businesses like the service clubs, the service industry, the restaurants, many of the other industries are competing directly one-on-one for jobs, for employees, with companies like Staples Call Center, who now, I believe, employs over 1,300 employees in the Sackville area. Probably the single largest employer in our community. Virtually 6-7 years ago, they weren't even there. And I would add, Mr. Speaker, that other call centers, another call center that employs a couple of hundred people located there just a few short months ago, this has created a problem where people in the food service industry, in the restaurant industry, and in the service business have to compete directly for those employees, and they're having a difficult time finding jobs or finding people to fill those jobs. So that's helped to stimulate what is now what I describe as one of the most vibrant and active communities in Metro, if not in the province of Nova Scotia. I also represent Kingswood, and Kingswood, as many of you would know, is a community that has undergone some recent challenges and is still undergoing challenges with respect to school boundaries. Kingswood will have a new school built to serve its needs. A primary to grade 9 school will serve the needs of Kingswood. Will be constructed by the year 2004-2005 and will serve those needs well, but they still have some pressing issues to deal with. They still have to deal with the school board that for some reason, and I don't understand it completely, but for some reason the school board that doesn't want to listen to the people. The people in Kingswood want their students to remain as a student group, as a community, yet somehow the school board insists on separating that community, dividing it in two, and sending half the students one way and half the other way. And I think it's regrettable that that's happening, and I know that the community is rallying strong to try to voice its opposition to these plans that will do nothing other than try to divide what is now a very united and a very strong community. And frankly, I think it's regrettable that they've gone down this road. I only have 1 minute left. I'm going to have to go quickly then, Mr. Speaker. But I believe that the community of Kingswood in the end will prevail. They're a very strong and active community. Mr. Speaker, considering I only have 1 minute left, I'm going to talk about 2 other communities that I represent. Beaverbank, which after the next election will no longer be part of this riding. But Beaverbank is a community that has overcome some tremendous challenges with respect to municipal sewer and water. This government, the federal government, through the Canada-Nova Scotia Infrastructure Works program, was able to dedicate $20 million to help them overcome what was one of the most environmentally sensitive problems in that community, providing badly needed sewer and water for that community. As well, the community of Maplewood and Hammonds Plains has overcome some of their water problems with hundreds of thousands of dollars being dedicated to that neighborhood, as well as to Upper Hammonds Plains to provide badly needed services that those communities need and deserve and expect. The interesting thing about Maplewood and Upper Hammonds Plains, that's the area where most of Metro gets its water from, yet for 2 decades, 20 years, the water flowed right past their community, Mr. Speaker, right down past their backyard and to the communities of Halifax, and they weren't able to access that, Mr. Speaker. And I see my time has expired.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Now, Member Cape West.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise and make a number of comments going into supply today. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't help but be somewhat taken by this rather unique article that was in today's Daily News on page 18. And it's referred to as "Style Defines the Debater." And it's an article, Mr. Speaker, that was inserted by the Honourable Member for Kings North. Now, the member for Sackville-Beaverbank would like me to table it. So obviously he doesn't have access to the media at his caucus office, so I will certainly do that. I will ask one of the pages to bring it over because it's good to see that members of the Conservative caucus are interested in what the member for Kings North has to say. Mr. Speaker, the member for Kings North is so absorbed in his desire and his quest to make everything so altruistic in this legislature that he continuously writes these articles pointing out all the errors and omissions and deficiencies and the weaknesses of various individual members, both individually and collectively as caucuses. Mr. Speaker, I somehow wonder if the honourable member for Kings North has missed his calling. With all due respect, perhaps he should be at university teaching political science, not engaging in the active debates before the legislature here today, addressing some rather pressing issues. Some pressing issues, by the way, Mr. Speaker, which are going on in his very own constituency. Mr. Speaker, we recall several weeks ago the flooding that took place here in this province. And Mr. Speaker, the honourable member for Kings North stood in his place and introduced one resolution for himself to put forth to his constituents that this is the position that he has taken. He wants to show his constituents that he is standing up for them. He is fighting for their cause. He is making sure that the Minister of Environment and Labour and the Minister responsible for EMO and everybody else sees that he is advancing the causes and the interests of his constituents. And what did that resolution say, Mr. Speaker? Congratulating those that started a fundraiser on some tapestry that they would sell tickets $10 each. Now, what has he said about those residents in his riding that have not received fair compensation? Nothing that we're aware of. What has he said about those communities that have been adversely affected by water contamination from the oil spills that were caused through that flooding disaster? Not one word. Perhaps the honourable member should take notice of the fact of what his job description is. He's not in here to pontificate about all the wrongs and the weaknesses of every other member. His job is as much to come in here and represent the interests of his constituents and stop trying to put himself up on a pedestal as if he is above all other members in this House. It's disrespect, Mr. Speaker. It's that type of condescending disrespect that infuriates the people of Nova Scotia. Yes, Mr. Speaker, much of that has been brought on the politicians themselves over the years. And no one particular party has a license above reproach. Let's be very clear, Mr. Speaker. So the member for Kings North would be well advised to earn his pay, earn his keep, as we used to say. If the individuals out on the street, on Hollis Street or Brunswick Street, if their pleas to be heard are to be continually ignored, then we have failed. We have failed. And the honourable member for Kings North should take a few moments to go out and listen to the strikers and the protesters. He should take a few moments to listen to what the parents had to say at a public meeting down at the Westin last evening. Take the time to understand the implications of what his government is doing to the people who need help. Never mind pontificating about how great thou art, because they are not interested. That's not why we were sent here. And that honourable member, I say shame. Shame on him that he would use this position in the legislature to advance his own self-gratification on how he thinks that he is the perfect MLA above any and all others. Mr. Speaker, we all come here with flaws. We all come here with weaknesses. But, Mr. Speaker, we come here with strengths, too. And I'm very proud of the people I represent. And to have that honourable member stand in his place or use the local media to try and tear down many of the conventions and the traditions that have been built up over the last 275 years through the efforts such as Joseph Howe and many of great orators and parliamentarians and legislators. Yes, Mr. Speaker, of all political stripes. I can only refer to some of the ones that have been here during my tenure. Some great, skillful politicians, such as the Honourable Rolly Thornhill. One of the greatest debaters in this legislature, the Honourable Gerald Regan, who for more than 8.5 hours debated a social issue, Mr. Speaker. And the member for Guysborough says, who else? Well, I can't say that for some of his predecessors who brought down some of the most horrendous debt-burdening budgets of the history of this province. It was a shame. That honourable member at that time brought shame to this legislature with the vote-buying scandal using government funds through supplying gravel on private property. Yes, Mr. Speaker, there's enough blame to go around in all parties, and I said that. But that's not what the member for Kings North was sent here for. Perhaps he should take a little time to reflect on members of his own caucus and their weaknesses, not just the weaknesses of others. Mr. Speaker, shame on that honourable member. Mr. Speaker, we have had some of the greatest debaters and legislators in this province. My colleague from Dartmouth East, in my view, is one of the best ministers of health. The member from Hants West, who is now the Minister of Environment and Labour, a very skillful and a very able legislator. He's made his mistakes. But, Mr. Speaker, why is valuable taxpayers' money being wasted on this foolishness when we've got people on the street pleading for help? We have disabled citizens of this province who have been uprooted and put into turmoil. What kind of a compassionate government, what kind of a message are we sending to the people of Nova Scotia with this neoconservative agenda? How patronizing and how disrespectful to try and deflect attention away from the real issues of the day. I would invite the honourable member for Kings North to stand in his place and tell these good citizens where he stands on this issue and what he is doing. He as an MLA, he as a legislator, he as a public policy maker is doing to address the ills and the misfortunes in the system, and how he's going to use the weight of his office to try and help these disadvantaged Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, never mind introducing frivolous resolutions, and sometimes half-hearted resolutions, and sometimes patronizing resolutions to make people kind of feel a little good, while in essence he's doing not what he was sent here to do. Mr. Speaker, those good folks out on the street, whether it be in Hollis, Brunswick, or wherever, they would better serve this province and the communities that they serve, the families, these very special needs persons, by being back on the job. And we have an obligation and a duty to help them go back on the job. They don't go out there because they enjoy protesting. They're not professional picketers. They are good, honest, hard-working Nova Scotians who have a genuine concern. And the collective bargaining process, I dare say, is failing them. And the Minister of Environment and Labour has the power to do something about it. And what's he doing? Nothing. And what's the Premier say? Oh, I'll go and I'll meet with the parents. But that's a start, and that's good. It's movement. At least it's a recognition after 2 weeks that this government has failed miserably. Not only for the workers, but most importantly for those people who, through no fault of their own, need our help as a society. Mr. Speaker, the member for Kings North would be well advised to champion the cause. If he sees himself as the social conscience of this legislature, what any other better issue to take up than the plight of the disadvantaged? Never mind, Mr. Speaker, talking about the inhibitions of his colleagues in the legislature about their ability to articulate an argument. Never mind, Mr. Speaker, the fact that, you know, he's able to be rewarded in some fashion, materially or however, by continually writing these articles, you know, and at the same time, you know, he likes to kind of jump in and say, oh, I'm a legislator, I'm a politician, I'm a public servant, and I'm very proud of it. And then he kind of jumps outside this skeleton that he represents and say, oh, no, well, look, you know, let's look down into this form. This is terrible. But these folks, Mr. Speaker, they sent us here. It doesn't matter what side of the House we are at this point. We all have an obligation as public servants to do something, whether it be on this particular issue, whether it's on education, whether it's on health, whether it's on finance. Never mind the patronizing comments and the platitudes. Mr. Speaker, I quite frankly, I find some of his comments quite offensive. But I guess that's one of the good things about democracy. We have the right to disagree. And we have the right in this form to express our opinion in a professional and fair-minded fashion. That's what Joseph Howe fought for. But Mr. Speaker, why the government allows that type of mandria to continue, that mindset to be pervasively perpetrated on the people of Nova Scotia, as much as to say, you're the ones that are at fault, because if you argue with us, you're the bad guys. You know, we know it's good for you. We're going to do it. And if you argue with us, you're the bad guys. You know, and you can't blame us if things don't work out. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's not quite that simple. Every one of us come in here to represent 52 constituencies of unique interest and concerns and demands. And there's giving and there's taking. But, Mr. Speaker, I realize my time is coming short on this. I would invite the honourable member for Kings North to come back and debate issues such as what I've raised here today. And we will debate him. We will debate him on every point of every issue that he raises, if he so chooses, where he was elected to debate them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Motion is carried.
The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Please call the estimates, Mr. Chairman, of the Minister of Education.
Yes, the Minister of Education's estimates. I'd recognize the member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, I'm not going to take very much time. I want to follow up with a few questions that I had after I thought more about the department's racial equity policy that I'd like to have some information from the minister on. And this should be very quick, I would think. So I have essentially 5 questions. I'm going to start with 3 and then 2, and that should wrap it up. Mr. Minister, the racial equity policy for the department, it calls for the establishment of an advisory committee chaired by the deputy. So I'm wondering if the committee has been established, and will the committee be releasing progress reports? So that's one question, sort of 2 questions, but one question. The other thing I want to ask Mr. Minister is, in order to do a program and planning, you need good information. We all agree on that, on the students. And in order to do programs in terms of Black and racially visible and other ethnically diverse learners, we need, good statistical information. Are we able to collect that information? Is there a process in place now to collect information on the situation that those students are in. And the last question I will ask before I take my seats is around the implementation of the racial equity policy at the board level, and it's how are boards going to be supported to implement the parts of the policy which will affect them?
The Honorable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the honourable member for the question. The first, there has already been one meeting of the committee. The honourable member referenced. There is another one scheduled for next week, and I would anticipate when they feel that they have completed their work, that indeed a report would be appropriate and would be forthcoming. With respect to the second question and the information that the member was inquiring about with respect to the numbers, that is information that the boards would have. I don't believe that we compile it separately, but I do believe that the boards do in fact have that information. With respect to the funding, we have allocated $150,000 as the first installment towards targeted funding for the RCH at the school boards, and this is intended to assist the boards in securing staff and doing the necessary professional development related to that. And I believe all boards have, in fact, taken advantage of this. All boards where it is necessary to take advantage of it have.
The member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the minister. I'm not sure that the boards actually are collecting the statistical information, and I'll tell the minister that last night I had a meeting with the Inner City Education Advisory Committee in my constituency, and the African Nova Scotian representative to the Halifax Regional Board was there and indicated that certainly in their board they don't have this information. They've recently hired somebody on contract to attempt to sketch out what it is they need. But I think that we really do need good statistical information in terms of retention, graduation, those kinds of issues. And I would encourage the department to look at that in light of their racial equity policy, because I think in order to test whether your policy is being effective or not, you need to have some evidence and some way of evaluating that. The other two questions I have, and one does in fact pertain to the targeted $150,000 for RCH coordinators in the boards. I specifically would like to know how the board in which the high school in Guysborough, where there has been some race relations issues, how that is going to be used, whether or not there will be an RCH coordinator who will report directly to the director in that board, and whether there will be any additional RCH resources in that board and for that specific school to work with the staff, given that that's been a bit of a hot spot. So that's one question I have. And then the last question I would like to ask is about the department's plan for the Afrocentric Learning Center, which was a commitment, a recommendation under the Black Learners Advisory Committee report. I know that there has been $100,000 has been allocated, but I believe that the recommendation was for $300,000 to be allocated. That's a third of what they require just to sort of start and build the foundation. And I'm wondering what the department plans to do to bring the expenditures to a level where that recommendation can become a reality. It has a long way to go. And this is a learning institute that we very much need to help us develop programs and research and do various projects that will help the African Nova Scotian learner. So those are my final two questions, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
I want to thank the honourable member for the question, and perhaps I'll begin with the second and then move to the first. Last year there was $100,000 provided for the support of the centre. That amount has been rolled into the base, and this year an additional $100,000 has been added for the support. They are, I believe, renting facilities at Mount St. Vincent, and that seems to be a satisfactory arrangement with respect to the centre. We obviously will want to continue working with them to support in the development of that key component of that program. Now, the second question related to the use of or the availability of an RCH person in the Strait area with respect to the school at Guysborough, and I can tell the honourable member that it's my understanding that the board it will in fact be ensuring that there is such a person in place on a go-forward basis. We have committed staff and resources to the board in the short term in order to deal with the situation to which the honourable member refers, and we believe that there is good progress being made. Certainly not something that's going to be accomplished overnight, but in the short term, good progress is being made. There's a recognition of the need to address this, and there is also a recognition for it to continue to be addressed on an ongoing basis, not just within that school, although it is a very important part of the Strait Board's needs with respect to these resources, but on an ongoing basis throughout the board. And we, as unfortunate as that incident was, sometimes situations provide us with the incentive to address real concerns and make progress, and I hope that will be the case in this situation.
Thank you. I understand that concludes questions to the Minister. If the Minister has some closing comments, he certainly has the floor. The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I do have just a few comments, and I will not prolong the committee greatly. But I first of all want to thank the members of the committee for their questions and suggestions, and obviously this is one element of the parliamentary process that I personally consider to be extremely important, where it is a requirement on the part of the ministers of the Crown to be accountable to the elected representatives of the people, and that process I think is essential, and we indeed it provides a focus not just for ministers, but it provides a focus for the public service in the sense that it does focus everyone in the public service to the fact that there is an annual accountability, and that the funds that they are provided in order to carry out their programs are funds that where there needs to be an accountability for that expenditure, where ministers can be questioned with respect to that, and I consider that to be an extremely important element of the democratic process, and indeed is very much a part of the history of the evolution of the parliamentary system of government. And last week, we started off by talking about our office lease at the Trademark Building, and we have completed our discussion on the very important topic of race relations within our schools. And that, in a sense, provides something of the wide spectrum of issues that are important with respect to the operation of the department. Now, we do, of course, have opportunities to focus on education, and some of the debate during the estimates did allow us to do that. Some of it at times seemed to be a bit of a distraction with respect to that, but I'm not going to comment on how members of the committee should in fact conduct themselves with respect to the estimates. We all have our own concept of how that should be done, and I'm not going to at this stage of the estimates comment on how members do or do not do that. We're very pleased with our time to learn strategy of the department, and perhaps I might have had a bit more time to talk about that. Our Active Young Readers and Jeune Lecture Active initiative will continue to give teachers and the resources and support that they need to help students improve their reading. And as well, Mr. Chairman, the fact that spelling will continue to be a key focus in 03-04, and that the department will continue to support school boards and schools in implementing the Math Matters strategy. These are things which are important, and indeed I was questioned on that earlier in question period, and we're going to live up to our commitment with respect to the additional staff that are required for that. Now, there was considerable discussion during the debate on the estimates with respect to accommodation, that money that was spent to look after our teachers when they come in. We consider our teachers to be an extremely important component of developing programs and implementing programs of the department, and we will continue to commit resources to assist in defraying the costs of teachers as they come to various centers throughout the province in an effort to assist us in the development and carrying out of our programs and our curriculum and the delivery of services to our students. I hope that I've been able to respond in the sufficient detail with respect to questions that were put to me. I was very pleased to have an opportunity to talk about the $11 million investment we've made in post-secondary education, an investment that is helping to mitigate tuition increases for students, and an investment that will help students to manage up to 40% of their student debt. That is relief to the extent of 40%. Mr. Chairman, I wish we had more time to talk about our exciting plan to expand the Nova Scotia Community College and the benefits that it will have for about 2,500 students in this province, not to mention the positive impact it will have on meeting the needs of our evolving labour market. The $123 million being invested in Nova Scotia Community College is part of the government's overall Skills Nova Scotia initiative. Another initiative the members of the committee didn't seem important to pursue at any great length. We also didn't get much of a chance to talk about the importance of student assessment and evaluations, and the fact that for the first time, individual student results will be available for grade 6 students in the area of area literacy. That's not usually the message I get from the House Leader. The message is usually quite different. I'll do my best. Mr. Chairman, there was a great discussion regarding our plans to build new schools and to invest in alterations and additions, and we will indeed be coming forward with plans with regard to that in the near future. Managing the capital construction process is complex, and there are many steps to follow before final decisions are made. And I'm sure honourable members of the committee can agree that what they can agree to is the fact that we have a responsibility to ensure all students, regardless of where they live, are learning in a safe and healthy environment. And that, of course, is the major initiative of our program with respect to school construction and additions and alterations. And we, of course, are seeking ways to respond to the Auditor General's report with respect to maintenance and the issue of deferred maintenance. And we will continue to work with our partners in addressing that particular need. We have to balance the priorities of one district with that of another district in the province, and there is a great deal of work that is done to ensure that most urgent needs are met and that we are spending taxpayers' money responsibly. What's important here is to stress the fact that the new schools we announce and the list of schools we are going to renovate is based on priorities developed by both the school boards and the department. I want to remind you that between 2000 and 2003, the government invested almost $200 million in building new schools and renovating existing schools. And we are working hard with our school boards, schools, and our boards and our parents to ensure the most urgent capital needs are met. Mr. Chairman, there are more than 460 public schools across the province, and the capital expense is significant and one we do not take lightly. In my opening remarks, I started my comments by acknowledging and thanking the staff of the Department of Education. I also want to acknowledge all of our partners in education for the level of cooperation and work which we receive from all of them. I want to particularly acknowledge and thank staff who have assisted me throughout the estimate debate. Staff who have been with me here in the legislature and people back at the office, and I very much appreciate their assistance and their very informative notes and guidance throughout the process. Mr. Chairman, I will then conclude by moving the following resolutions. I believe this is the appropriate procedure. Mr. Chairman, I move that the sum not exceeding $980,241,000 be granted to the Lieutenant Governor to defray expenses in respect to the Department of Education pursuant to the estimate. And I further move resolution, the first one was Resolution E3, Resolution E4, resolved that a sum not exceeding $205,805,000 be granted to the Lieutenant Governor to defray expenses in respect of assistance to universities, Department of Education pursuant to the estimate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister. Shall resolutions E3 and E4 stand? Stand. Thank you for your comments, Minister. I would like to now recognize the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, please call the estimates of the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you. I'll call the estimates of the Minister in the Department of Community Services. Minister, I'll ask you to take your seat and also ask your staff who's accompanying you to come into the chamber. Minister, are you going to wait for your staff, or are you going to start with opening comments? It's your choice.
I anticipate that my staff are on their way down. I noticed one of them during question period, so in anticipation of their arrival, I want to I want to recognize the fact that time is drawing short in the estimates here. There are 3 departments yet to go, and out of respect for the opposition, I would like to show my appreciation for the time that is left to them by starting my comments. So.
And I'm just going to allow. Thank you, Minister. Time being 2:54, we will recognize you have the floor. Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to start by introducing 2 people to the Chamber and indeed to Nova Scotians who in fact are no stranger to them. George Hudson, who is in charge of Finance Division, and Clem Henneberry, who is one of his senior managers there. And they are well familiar with this Chamber, and I will be relying upon them to assist me throughout the estimates.
Order, please. I'd like to recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
On a point of order.
Point of order.
Question to the Minister. Will the Deputy Minister be joining the Minister during the deliberations?
Yes, it's a question, Minister. Would you recognize and answer that question, please?
No.
No. Thank you, Minister. You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, it is my pleasure to rise here today to share with you some of the major milestones and achievements of the Department of Community Services. The Department of Community Services delivers a wide range of social services to Nova Scotians in need. We work with other levels of government and many community-based organizations to provide a network of social services. Community Services continues to take steps to build a strong, viable foundation for social services in Nova Scotia. This past year has been an exciting time at our department, and we are looking forward to making even more progress this year. Mr. Chair, in conjunction with the federal government, we have focused a great deal of attention on Nova Scotia's children over the past year, particularly in the areas of childcare and early learning. Today, our children and families are benefiting from significant improvements in early childhood services since the launch of the Early Childhood Development Initiative in 2000. Through this federal-provincial initiative, the province will invest more than $3.7 million this year to strengthen the foundation for early childhood development in Nova Scotia. This has led to new and expanded services that help our children grow up healthy, happy, and secure. Our plan to improve childcare started with a major investment in the staff who deliver these vital services. So far, close to $7 million has been provided to recruit and retain qualified staff in centres across the province. A further $1 million in grants is helping early childhood training institutions create new professional development opportunities. 325 new full-time day spaces and 74 part-day spaces have been created through new childcare startup and expansion grants. Low and moderate income families have benefited from 200 new subsidized portable childcare spaces, which parents can take with them if they move to another area of the province. There are now more than 2,650 subsidized seats in communities across Nova Scotia. This summer, the province will announce that more subsidized spaces will be made available. Parents are also being supported in finding quality childcare in their communities. $450,000 has been provided to create childcare resources and referral centers that give parents new resources to access local caregivers and information to help them find quality childcare. An additional $750,000 has been directed to programs and training initiatives that enhance opportunities for children with special needs to access licensed childcare. We are also investing $500,000 to help children who have language challenges through the introduction of an early language and learning program in Nova Scotia communities. In March, Mr. Chair, I was pleased to join my colleagues from the other provinces and the federal government in agreeing to a 5-year funding framework that will provide new funding for provincially regulated childcare programs and services. The new framework also gives us flexibility to make sure we address local needs and priorities. Mr. Chair, my department has also been working to improve services for Nova Scotians with intellectual disabilities. The Community Supports for Adults program provides a wide range of services, including homes for special care, small option homes, supervised apartments, adult residential centers, regional rehabilitation centers, and adult service centers. This year, the province has demonstrated its commitment to improving these supports by increasing the Community Supports for Adults budget by $12.8 million for the 2003-2004 year. This commitment was acknowledged and supported in a media release from the Nova Scotia Association of Healthcare Organizations. In November of 2002, the province launched a comprehensive review of this program, recognizing the need to improve the way services are provided for people with intellectual disabilities and long-term mental illness in our communities. Through this review, we will establish a standard level of quality, accessibility, and flexible services across the province. The review is looking at all aspects of the current program, including access to services, assessment, licensing, information technology, funding, and legislation. The province has already taken steps to improve services by introducing training standards for staff who provide care for clients. These training standards have been supported with an investment of $28 million, Mr. Chair, in an enhanced wage package over the past 4 years. Service providers receive this funding to increase the wages of their staff to ensure there is equity among group home workers across the province. And indeed, Mr. Chairman, this is to stop the situation where the caregivers were moving between the service providers and disrupting the care to their clients. Several larger institutions have also been closed in favor of smaller community-based homes, helping clients to be closer to family and friends and to take an active role in their communities. Mr. Chair, we are working with clients, service providers, and other departments to create a program that meets the unique needs of our clients. We know that any new program will need the support of the community. A community committee with advocacy, service provider, and consumer representatives has been established to give input into this review. I encourage all Nova Scotians to give their thoughts about these services and supports through the departmental website or by written submission. Community feedback and information gathered through the review will result in a discussion paper that will be distributed widely for input later this year. Mr. Chair, I am pleased to report that more Nova Scotians are achieving their goals and achieving greater self-sufficiency through enhanced employment support services offered by our department. In 2003-2004, the department will continue its investments in this area. Significant progress has been made. In the last 4 years, the number of people on income assistance has steadily declined from approximately 42,000 to 33,000. And I would add, Mr. Speaker, that this has empowered those clients to go out, seize the opportunities, get the training, the education they need to better their life, something that the old systems, the municipal ones and the old provincial ones, sometimes thwarted inadvertently. Although the intentions were the best, it did not always open doors for the clients. This has changed with the new Employment and Support and Income Assistance Act. This year, 3,500 income assistance recipients will successfully make the transition to work through programs that encourage and empower them as they move towards employability. Mr. Chair, each year more than 10,000 income assistance clients participate in employment supports, including career development services, training programs, and job opportunities. Employment support staff work with each client to create an individual employment action plan that helps him or her move towards self-sufficiency, while encouraging clients to participate in lifelong learning. The key, of course, to greater advancement as they move into successful careers. A wide range of supports are available to clients in their communities. Personal development, such as life skills, self-esteem workshops, and budgeting. Job preparation supports, including resume preparation, workshops, employment referrals, and on-the-job placements. Skill-specific training, placements, and short-term courses such as first aid, computer programs, and the Educate to Work program through the Nova Scotia Community College. Career counseling, vocational assessments, and employment action and learning plans. Office and technology support such as internet access, telephone service, photocopy and mail service, clerical services, and computer access. Literacy and academic upgrading, including the Nova Scotia School for Adult Learning, community-based upgrading programs, workplace literacy services, and tutoring services. Mr. Chair, I'm also pleased to report on a project that demonstrates the creative employment initiatives that are being developed by department staff, clients, and Nova Scotia communities. A unique project has been created with 3 community business development corporations that provides clients with opportunities to create their own business, helping them to become more self-sufficient while contributing to their local economies. We have also entered into a partnership with the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council to help income assistance recipients develop and run successful cooperatives. Other community-based initiatives include partnerships with the 13 regional development authorities, which coordinate community development in their areas, and the Halifax Inter-City Initiative, which is supporting the development of an inner-city neighborhood in collaboration with residents, organizations, and community agencies. Mr. Chair, we also recognize that clients may need financial supports to carry out their employment action plans, including housing, flexible child care assistance, transportation allowances to help clients get to education, training, and employment, and coverage of prescription drugs for 1 year after the client leaves the system for employment. The department also supports people with disabilities through the Employment Assistance for Persons with Disabilities program, a program that was recently extended, Mr. Chair, for another year by an exchange of letters between the provincial ministers and the federal minister. This is a 50-50 cost-sharing arrangement, Mr. Chair, as the critics would be aware. By offering a wide range of employment supports, our government is helping Nova Scotians find new ways to reduce barriers to work, improve their education and employment skills, and reach personal goals right in their home communities. That said, we know there are some Nova Scotians that will always need our support. This year, the province will provide approximately $230 million in income support to more than 55,000 Nova Scotians. In addition, our government has taken significant steps to help improve the situation for low-income families with children in Nova Scotia. This year, over 60,000 children in Nova Scotia will receive payments under the National Child Benefit and Nova Scotia Child Benefit programs. By providing child benefits outside the income assistance system, we have made it easier and more financially viable for these parents to return to work. Now, someone on assistance doesn't have to worry about losing their children's benefits if they enter the workforce. Mr. Chair, we know that affordable housing is key to healthy communities. I have just returned from national meetings of ministers responsible for housing, and the need for affordable housing is an issue right across this country. Mr. Chair, this government is committed to improving the health, well-being, and self-sufficiency of Nova Scotians by providing affordable housing to low-income families, seniors, and individuals with mental or physical challenges. Each year, the province offers a wide range of housing programs and services for about 20,000 Nova Scotian families. Programs include rental housing accommodation and supplements, grants or loans for home repairs and renovations, and mortgages to purchase or build modest homes. In addition to maintaining expenditures for existing housing and repair programs, in 2003-2004, we will work with all levels of government and communities to help people find affordable housing in Nova Scotia. One of our most ambitious programs is the Canada-Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Agreement, a $37.26 million federal provincial initiative that will provide funding for the construction and renovation of up to 1,500 affordable housing units for low to moderate income Nova Scotians over the next 5 years. The Residential Rehabilitation Assistance Program provides forgivable loans to low-income Nova Scotians who require much-needed repairs to their homes to ensure the safety and adequacy of their housing. This program helps approximately 1,000 people, Mr. Chair, families, Mr. Chair, each year, and has been renewed for an additional 3 years as a result of continued funding from both the provincial and federal governments. The province also plays an active role in the Supporting Community Partnership Initiative, which addresses the issue of homelessness in Canada's major cities. An important program, Mr. Chair, right here in Halifax, our capital. Since this program began 3 years ago, it has achieved some important results in the province's capital, including the formation of a steering committee, the development of a community action plan on homelessness, and the completion of more than 30 projects to improve and expand existing community infrastructure, such as the Metro Turning Point, Phoenix House, and other worthy projects. The province will continue to provide a significant level of funding for this initiative to complement renewed federal funding. In closing, Mr. Chair, there is much more to say about the activity in the Department of Community Services, but these are just some of the highlights. This government is working hard to provide supports that offer Nova Scotians the support they need to live in their communities. We work in partnership with Nova Scotians in need to provide programs and services that help them become self-sufficient as they are able. At the same time, we are committed to ensuring our most vulnerable citizens have the supports needed to live safely and securely. Mr. Chair, while there are challenges, we see many more opportunities. We will continue to invest in Nova Scotians, to work in partnership in communities, and to seek out creative ways to help all Nova Scotians reach their full potential. And Mr. Chair, with those brief opening comments, I look forward to the questions and the comments from the opposition critics.
Thank you, Minister, for your comments today. The time being 3:12, I recognize a member from the NDP caucus, and that member would be from Dartmouth North. Member, you have the floor. 1 hour in turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the Minister and his staff who are here present for budget estimates for their comments. I want to tell the Minister that he certainly is living in a different world of Nova Scotia than I am. And I want to tell the Minister, although he boasts about the significant decline in the number of clients who are on income supports in this province, there is a real serious problem out there because it doesn't reflect or jive with, in fact, the Metro food banks that's saying that there are more individuals whom, in fact, are relying on food banks in this province of Nova Scotia. Also, the kind of jobs and the initiative programs, I don't want to get into that now with the Minister because I will during the questioning of this budget get into the specifics with respect to what kind of employment services those individual clients who were formerly on income assistance through the Employment Supports Program are receiving. I don't know as well, Mr. Chairman, if the Minister of the Department of Community Services has had any input with respect to the $155 tax rebate that the Minister of Finance has offered to all Nova Scotians. There are many Nova Scotians, as this Minister is very much aware, who live in poverty in the province of Nova Scotia, as my critic for finance from Halifax Fairview has indicated, that in fact 300,000 Nova Scotians will not benefit from a $155 check that the government is going to give back as a tax rebate. I want that minister to know that those people in this province who are living in poverty could have very well better utilized those dollars than the individuals who are going to receive it, and particularly those in the upper income brackets in this province. I want you to know, Mr. Minister, that those individuals will probably take that money and spend it outside of this province on going on a trip or buying some antiques, while the individuals whom in fact would have been the benefactors of these tax dollars would have supported the small businesses in this province, because they would have been out there buying the consumer goods that they so desperately need. And I don't know if the minister has had any input with respect to those dollars, but I want the minister to know that that's one red flag that I identified very quickly, that in fact there is a need for his Department of Social Services, when in fact people are going to benefit from this province's success with respect to the deficit cutting and with respect to receiving profits, then every Nova Scotian should benefit as a result of that, Mr. Minister, not just a few. Every Nova Scotian has contributed by paying into HST taxes, particularly the poor who have to go out there and buy babies' clothing for their children, supplies and so on and so forth, household needs and so on. Those are the individuals who continue to put that money through the economy and continue to keep those businesses flowing. Mr. Minister, I would like you to respond at a later time during budget estimates with respect to your input on the decision of your government to give a tax rebate of $155 to individuals whom, in fact, are much better off than those who are impoverished in this province. You go on to say that your government has made great strides with respect to individuals who are in fact on social assistance, and you made the comment that in fact it moved from, I believe, 42,000 down to 33,000, Mr. Minister. That's a change of about 9,000 people who were on the income supports roll. And as a result of employment supports coming in, you credit employment supports with a lot of that, Mr. Minister, which in fact we and you and I both know differently, that some people were removed from social assistance primarily because they were encouraged to apply for Canada Pension Disabilities and receive the disability benefits, and because their incomes were at a particular level, were no longer on social assistance. I don't know if you count those individuals, but those 9,000 people are probably counted somewhere. Also, Mr. Minister, if you look at the previous Liberal government, you will have noted since 1996 that there has been a continual decline in the number of recipients on social assistance in this province. That happened even during the time in which municipalities, because of the potential growth that was happening as a result of offshore development in this province. Your government, you boast about your government's track record. Your government introduced a bill, Bill 62, which in fact provided employment support. And at the end of that, Mr. Minister, one also should note that as a result of that, many people have been shifted into jobs that they normally would not have gone to. At the same time, you grandfathered those individuals who were in the university and would continue to support them, but any new individuals who wanted to go to university other than community colleges would no longer be supported by the Department of Community Services. Yet we have a nursing shortage, and many of those individuals would have gone into nursing programs in this province. Mr. Minister, your government is also the government with respect to trying to cut $900,000 last year from the from transition houses and transition centers across this province. Mr. Speaker, I would say today, when I look at this budget, there is still also a small decline in the transition allotments to your budget, which indicates that in fact you place very little emphasis on the importance of assisting people who are disadvantaged in this province. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that there's also, when you spoke about persons with intellectual disabilities, I note the Kendrick report. For example, Mr. Speaker, the Kendrick report has been a report that was commissioned by the provincial government, and also that the provincial government had a commitment to the Kendrick report. There are 47 advocacy groups who are a member of the Kendrick report. Their very only objective was to initially get off the ground, was to set up a blue ribbon committee. This government has completely ignored that. There was also the issue with respect to workload, caseload overload. The minister has not looked at that issue, and I'll be bringing up questions about that at a future time. There's also the moratorium on small options homes, in which the minister had made some comment with respect to where there might be some direction. I don't know if the minister intends to lift that moratorium or not. And I want to get into right now, Mr. Minister, if I can move over to the housing issue. We do know that in September of 2002, Nova Scotia government was one of the last governments to sign the Affordable Housing Agreement with the federal government of Canada, and that is the $37.26 million that in fact was agreed upon, jointly shared by the federal and provincial government. I want to tell you that you have a very capable housing manager in this district by the name of Mr. Harold Dillon. He's been there for an extremely long time. He knows exactly how much emphasis has been placed on housing in this province. As a matter of fact, during the previous Liberal government and during your 4-year reign of your government, Minister, not one single thing has actually been done to address the serious crisis issue of housing in this province, with the exception of a most recent development of a 15-unit, I believe, complex that is slated for Middleton. I don't know when that's going to open, but there is a 15-unit there. And I might also mention that the provincial government did have some input with respect to the homeless units that had been built on the corner of Garish and on the Garish and Gottingen. But that was a three-party commitment. That was the municipal government, the provincial, and the federal government. As a matter of fact, the municipal government offered the property. Again, Mr. Minister, it was during your government's reign, and I believe it's the first time in the history of the province of Nova Scotia, that your government actually sold modest housing. There was 2 modest housing units in the Halifax Regional Municipality. Rather than your government taking the opportunity to repair and fix those modest housing and to put them back into the program so that individuals could be the recipients of those modest housing program, they were sold on the market. Also, your government was responsible for making an application to a municipality to rezone a parcel of land that was slated for seniors housing development. It would have been the first seniors housing development in some 10 years in this province. But your government made the application to the municipality to rezone the parcel of land to single-family residential development. Those historically are things that your government has done. There has been very, very little emphasis placed on this, Mr. Minister, and I know that I talked to you about the modest housing program, and you're very much aware that and I will do that during budget estimates again. There's also reports that I don't believe your government or your Department of Housing has even bothered to look at, and those were reports that were placed in under the former Liberal government, and those reports were New Directions in Social Housing that was produced in July of 1997. Also, New Directions in Provincial Housing Action of 1998, that was Housing for Tomorrow, and the reports on senior citizens, pensioners, and what they had recommended to your government with respect to housing. Mr. Minister, you may at some time be able to tell me just exactly what your government has done in this particular field. But there has been no evidence to me and to those individuals out there whom in fact the government has had the opportunity or should have had the opportunity to work with, and I know that they did. That they've worked with individuals with respect to housing programs out there. The Coalition on Homelessness, the Nova Scotia Coalition on Housing, and also there's been a number of reports with respect to, and I believe that they have also sent letters off to the minister with respect to that issue as well. But Minister, I want to, and if you'll have to excuse me a minute, some things have slipped here off my desk. I'll just pick them up here a second. I was hoping a page would slide by. What I want to do, Mr. Minister, is I want to go to a very pressing issue of today. And that's an issue that in fact has confronted us, and it has been placed before you and the Premier during question period. And that is the issue with respect to the regional residential society services, counselors and the counselors that are employed there. And I just want to ask the minister. Now, the minister knows that obviously this has been an issue prior to setting the budget. The minister knew that this issue would need to be budgeted for. He did know that there was some difficulty at the negotiating table. That in fact, obviously, if he communicated with the board of directors of the Residential the Residential Services Society, the RRSS for an acronym, and makes it shorter, much easier to manage. The minister is obviously aware that he's had communication with the board of directors and how negotiations were going on, and probably long before this budget has come forward. I'm wondering, and my very first question to the minister is that if in fact you were aware that there was this potential that there would not be an agreement, have you given any serious thought to how your department might very well try not to make this a protracted or prolonged strike or cessation of work?
Thank you, member, for the question, and direct that to the Minister of Community Services.
Yes, and I thank the member opposite for his comments. I may not entirely share his point of view on all of them, but I respect his right to his opinion, and I will endeavor to try to respond to his question. His question is with reference to the Regional Residential Services Society strike, which is currently ongoing. It's affecting 178 adults with generally with intellectual disabilities, and it is very difficult on them. I did meet with the Premier and with the families, in fact, just a few short minutes ago. And one thing that came out of that meeting, which was wonderful to hear again, is how well this program is working for them when there's no interruption in services. It has made a dramatic difference to them, and I think the member opposite and I both welcome that and appreciate that has been brought forward by enhancing the programs, and indeed, not the least of which, to recognize those employees that I know would prefer to be caring for the residents today and not out on the picket line. That they represent about 5% of the community supports for adults employees in the province. There's about 5,000 of them, and the service is delivered by a number of nonprofit organizations scattered throughout the province, and many with volunteer boards of directors that may have perhaps family members on them or other people with that sort of professional expertise. This is something that we've discussed in question period before, but I think it's important to put it in perspective. There was a recognition with the upload of community services, which included a lot of, from the municipalities, which included a lot of these homes, group homes, small option homes, and other supervised apartments, as the member opposite points out. They came up to the provincial government at a total price tag of about $44 million initially, but what we soon discovered is that the level of care across the province was not consistent. This was a concern, and I'm going to give some credit to the former government. I would assure you, Mr. Chair, that there's many opportunities that I've had opportunity to criticize them, and rightly so, but in this I would like to give some acknowledgement that they also played a role in this. And a system was put together that standardized the care from one end of the province to the other, that recognized that a higher level of training was needed for those employees to deliver that standardized service, and that a more appropriate wage should be struck that should be uniform across the province. In fact, to prevent employees from trying to better their financial situation because it might be advantageous to them to move between one care provider to another one because there could be a wage differential. So by going with a uniform provincial wage, which works out to an FTE allowance to that care provider of $28,500 or $13 per year, or $13.70 an hour, the intention was to try to recognize the additional community college training courses that were required to deliver that type of care. And Mr. Chair, I would tell you that in addition to that, coming into these negotiations, which have been going on since the contract expired on March the 31st of 2002, there was a recognition that there could be problems. I appreciate the member opposite bringing up that point because indeed he's absolutely right. There was an attempt to try to work with the sector, not just RRSS, but in fact all the service providers in that sector to try to get a sense of what would be acceptable to the employees and still be sustainable to government. And with regards to that, there was a proposal that was put forward in addition to the 2%, 2%, 2% over 3 years. There was provision made to the tune of about $5 million, I understand to be the number, for a pension plan, and also an enhanced level of participation in picking up the cost of their group plan benefits. And we felt that we had been successful in striking a balance that we could sustain as a government and that would be acceptable to the employees. A number of unions did accept that agreement. It was incorporated in the budget. There is the largest increase in the budget is in the area of community supports for adults, and the budget number that's in there, Honourable Member, is $12.8 million. And I thank you for your question.
The member from Dartmouth North.
And I suspect, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I suspect through you to the Minister that the additional, the $12 million that is there, the increase, was in anticipation that there would be some collective agreements or wage settlements that would have to be negotiated and that the province would have to ante up those dollars in the pot. When you tell me, Mr. Minister, that this represents those 250 councillors represent only 5%. Is that what is this a move by your government to just simply hold out and not provide the wage parity with those development workers as a result of your negotiating agreements that had been settled prior? Or are you prepared to put additional money into the table and negotiate that package with these individuals? The question is this, is that Mr. Minister, I know that you're receiving advice from the Minister of Justice not to negotiate on the floor of the House. And I'm not asking you, Mr. Minister, to negotiate on the floor of the House. What I'm asking you is to have clarity with respect to this particular situation that's out there. You've recognized that individuals with intellectual disabilities are going to be a primary concern to your government. You have recognized that you are going to provide additional supports to that segment of your department's program. And so what I'm asking you, Mr. Minister, is not to negotiate on the floor of the House, but are you using these individuals as an example of your tough stance by not providing additional dollars on the table when in fact you know that the board and their a capable board and their volunteers who have to negotiate with the RSS councillors. So my question to you is once again, are you simply using the 250 councillors that are out here now on strike as an example of a tough stance by your government and its unwillingness to move because you have settled previous agreements?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to answer the member opposite's question, his concern is that that this is a different approach that's being taken by the service provider with their union. And I would suggest to the member opposite that there are many service providers, and in fact, the package that is available to all service providers right across the province. And just to add a little bit more focus to where we came from 4 years ago, indeed it was more than 4 years ago, for that classification of worker, which is the proper name is residential rehabilitation worker, the average wage in the sector back before we started this process was about $16,000. It is now $28,500. We have put more on the table. This represents approximately a 78% increase over that period of time, although I do want to recognize that it is an average, and that would not be necessarily the case for every employees. For some it would be more, for some it would be less. But to answer the member's question, this is something that we provide to the sector, and it's available to everybody that works in the sector.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the minister talks about bringing this parity across the spectrum in the province of Nova Scotia. And I keep telling the minister that that was a commitment through the service exchange, that there was a commitment if the Department of Community Services, many of these small option homes and group homes and supervised apartments and small options homes were the responsibility of some municipalities. The minister is very much aware. And as a result of service exchange, there was a commitment that this government would, in fact, much the same as social service rates across this country, they would bring some sensibility to the levels of services, increase the training programs where those training programs were needed, provide the additional dollars to bring the wage structure up so that it would be consistent across the province with respect to the job that they do. There's no question about that. Now, the minister is very much aware that the councillors in these small options homes, group home, and supervised apartments do one tremendous amount of work that is not done by a development worker in an institution. And the minister knows very well that a development worker in an institution, if he or she needs a doctor or a nurse or something, calls up a porter and goes. That doesn't happen with a councillor in a regional residential services society center. They do that themselves. And that's the reason why there needs to be, and if this government believes in fairness, there needs to be a wage parity issue looked at. The other question is I'm wondering, and I hope that this is certainly not true, and I know the Minister of Community Services would never do this, but is this an opportunity for the Minister of Community Service to slide back through institutionalization of individuals back in, maybe not on the scale that we have seen in the villas in Sackville and in the institution of the Nova Scotia Hospital or something, but on a smaller scale whereby you got 15, 25, or 50 people into a residential unit. And this is a way of having your backroom lawyers and people who are doing the administration and who are providing you the advice to slide this through in a manner that tries to justify a way to provide a service to individuals. And I certainly hope that this is not a direction in which the minister is certainly looking at. And I certainly hope that he is not using the councillors who are now on strike as an opportunity to reintroduce a program such as that?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
The answer is no. And I would like to point out that what we have here is a very difficult labor dispute, difficult for the residents, difficult for the families, and difficult for the union members that are out picketing when they would rather be caring for the residents.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the minister is very much aware that every one of those councillors out there do not want to be on strike. They want to be in there providing the services to those individuals with intellectual disabilities. Many of them have been there with the same person for 10, 12 years. You know, they know the behaviors of those individuals. They have lived with them constantly on a 24-hour basis in some cases. And I'm saying to the minister that is something that you ought to serious look at. But the point is the minister can do something with respect to this issue. And the minister can do it very quickly. Your government, when in fact there was there was this Bill 68, I believe, was on the issue of paramedics. And you were going to legislate the paramedics back to work, your government. Your government quickly come to the conclusion that it was not the appropriate thing to do, thanks to a lot of debate and late-night debate on that Bill 68 by our party and by the third party. So you weren't successful in introducing that legislation. As a matter of fact, it was dropped, and wisely so, and your government introduced binding arbitration. What are you afraid of by introducing binding arbitration to the group of councillors that are out there now?
The Minister of Community Services.
I think that the member opposite would know that the nature by which we fund community supports for adults through the many nonprofit service providers does not lend itself to this. We have committed to geographic wage equity, and we have followed through in that commitment. We have bargained in good faith with this through the service providers by providing funding to the sector, and as such, agreements have been reached with a number of the unions. Substantial additional monies have gone into providing care for the residents in community supports for adults. And in fact, the member opposite made reference to the fact that this was part of the service exchange with the municipalities, and in this case it was more of an upload because the province took it over without a corresponding commitment on the part of the municipalities, and it was originally estimated to cost $144 million. Actually, because of the improvements that we made to the program, that standardized level of care and many of the things that we're speaking about, the actual cost was more in line with $53 million. So the municipalities are no longer responsible for funding those services, and we feel that a better service is provided to the residents.
The member for Dartmouth North.
The minister knows that was a commitment years ago. The time is now to move on. The minister, I don't know if he's free to make comments with respect to some of the families and their children with their adults with intellectual disabilities. If in fact he's met with those families, and if in fact he's able to tell this House just exactly what had transpired with respect to that with respect to that meeting. I believe it was a most recent meeting. It might have been very well this afternoon, and it might have been just shortly after question period. And if in fact that is the case, if he's prepared to tell me what had transpired through that conversation, and if in fact the Premier was there, and if in fact there were any commitments made.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
The honourable member, I think, would approve that as such as I'm able, I have tried to meet with the families when they have requested it of me. And indeed, there was a meeting held this afternoon with them. They They, first of all, wanted to express how appreciative they were of the new program and what a difference it had made either to their children or to their siblings or whatever the relationship with them. And clearly, they're very distressed by what is going on, and they are concerned by the effect it is having on their family member, the residents. And it's a concern that I share with them, the Premier shares with them, and that the honourable member opposite shares with them. They wanted to make sure that we understood their frustration with the current situation, and to go further than that, I feel I would be betraying their confidence. I really think that that should be coming directly from the family members. But that was the gist of what the meeting was about.
The member for Dartmouth North.
I guess the minister, obviously after having conversation with the family members, would agree that it makes no sense for the government to harden its position and stay the course with respect to this strike. And I guess I would ask the minister if in fact he would agree to that as well. Would he agree that that in fact there has to come a time? So does he have anything up his sleeve with respect to bringing both Local 66 and the board of RRS back together to do some negotiating?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I would tell the member opposite that probably one of the most difficult items I had to include in my budget was the substantial increase in community supports for adults, and to explain that to my colleagues. And as such, I feel that I have recognized the value, and the government has recognized the value of the excellent work done by the people that deliver those services, including those in RRSS.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the minister still evaded the question. The question was, as I asked the minister, does he have anything available at his disposal to bring both the Local 66 and the board together to start negotiating again to resolve this very serious crisis that's out there? Every day, the minister leaves the person with intellectual disabilities in a different environment. There are behavioral changes, there are mood changes, there are special needs, and then there is the loss of attachment by the counselor as well. And then there has to be a reintroducing of all that when the strike is over, and it takes some time to bring that back together, whereby the individuals whom in fact the counselors are looking at have gained the trust and support again. These are very personal environments. They're very closely attached environments to individuals. And the minister should know the longer that this protracts, the more difficult there is it's going to happen. And I don't want to bring the issue up of the Eddie Shepherd issue with respect to small options homes, but that can happen if in fact people are moved. And what's going to happen if a serious crisis occurs while this strike is on? Who's going to be responsible? Minister, is your department going to be responsible, or are you going to lay that blame on the agency or the organization that now has the responsibility to look after that issue?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I would say, Honourable Member, going back to your concern about trying to find a solution to this impasse, that in terms of the government's commitment, it reads in the estimates at $12.8 million, a very substantial commitment on the part of the government, because we felt, Honourable Member, that we did have a viable agreement with the sector, and as such, that was the commitment. But what you are speaking of, Honourable Member, of course, is the collective bargaining process, the labour laws of the province, and as the member pointed out, this can be difficult. We've been there before when it comes to health care, and we are going to respect the labor, the collective bargaining process and the labor laws, and we hope that with those additional monies that we put on the table, that that will be sufficient to lead to an agreement.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Mr. Minister, I know that you are probably in a position, not probably, you are in the position of closely monitoring the impact on the residents and the family members with respect to this continuing failure to get both sides to the table to negotiate. I'm wondering if you can tell me how you're monitoring that impact, and are you getting daily responses, weekly responses, or what the responses are, and who you're receiving those responses from, if you possibly can.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
The answer would be daily, and the ones that are most vivid are from the families, although clearly the department is advising me several times a day with every new development, as the care coordinators are out there trying to monitor the care that is being provided to the residents. That is a function that is provided by the department as they go and they meet with the people that are in care of the various nonprofit service providers. And yes, we are watching it constantly. I'm very concerned about it, but the reports that mean the most to me are the ones that come from the families.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also will ask the Minister rather a quick question. Minister, can you tell us who's providing the support services now and what their qualifications are?
Before I recognize I'll recognize the Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Honourable Member, before the commencement of the strike, there was an attempt on the part of RRSS to get some sort of sense as to how much notice they would be given if there was going to be an interruption in services. They were not successful, at least initially, in getting that assurance from the union leadership. As a result of that, a contingency plan was struck that was shared with the department. I personally had a lot of questions and wanted the assurance that it was the best that it could be under the circumstances. And I went over actually to Simpson Hall, which is one of the temporary locations, to provide care initially for some 27 residents, to inspect it myself and to meet with some of the staff that would be providing those services. I was very impressed in particular with the nurse that was in charge of the hall, and while it would be my wish that there was no labor interruption, I did feel that under the circumstances that they were getting the best care possible under the circumstances.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm hearing words across this chamber floor of saying, tell him he didn't answer the question. I'm very much aware, Minister, you did not answer the question. I asked you who was providing the services and what their qualifications were. As a matter of fact, Mr. Minister, I'd go one step further and suggest that you table who's providing the services and table their qualifications as well, so that we can see.
Before I recognize the minister, I want to explain to the gallery that there is no gestures or expressions to express either support or no support, and if there is any more, then I will ask that the gallery be cleared. All right? I recognize the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I would start by saying that the responsibility for the contingency plan rests with RRSS. However, to answer your specific question, as I understand it, the employment agency that is providing the workers that are caring for the residents along with management is RJF.
I recognize the member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. And RJF is an acronym for?
I recognize the Minister of Community Services.
Honourable member, I would again suggest that the responsibility for putting the plan in place was of the service provider, which is RSS, and they have done this. I did inquire about the qualifications of some of the key people there and had took comfort in them. In fact, the person that is in charge of Simpson Hall, who was basically moved in there, is a very experienced RN who has spent, I understand, her entire career caring for adults with intellectual disabilities. Honourable member, the people at RSS and clearly my staff and the care coordinators would be aware of the people that are also involved with delivering the services. But this is what I saw when I went there personally, and I was comforted to meet the manager that was caring for the residents at Simpson Hall.
I recognize the member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, the minister. The minister once again is being a ghost at the table here with respect to his responsibility as the Minister of Community Services. He also is very much aware that, yes, the board of our RSS is responsible in the event of a dispute of making sure that the individuals under their care and under their support programs are in fact looked after. But the government is ultimately responsible for knowing the level of services that the substitute company is providing, as well as the qualifications of those individuals in the event that there might be a liability to the government. So the government ought to and should be able to table to this House the qualifications of the service provider and the employees that are hired by the service provider to provide the services to the individuals under their care. So my question to the minister is, please.
I recognize the Minister of Community Services.
As the member opposite would know, we are responsible for the licensing. That was done. The 7th floor of Simpson Hall did pass the scrutiny of the appropriate persons in my department, but it is up to the service provider, RRSS, to provide the plan. The department did approve the plan, and I suppose that if the member opposite is making the point that I cared enough to go over there and look at it before the strike actually began and when they were first moving in, that is true, but I in no way am suggesting that I am any kind of substitute for the trained professionals that I have working for me in the department. And actually, I'm going to correct that. They're not working for me, they're working for our clients and Nova Scotians. Thank you.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the minister. The minister, when you cited, or RRSS Board of Directors cited the location of Simpson Hall, did you give any serious consideration to what kind of connotations that might bring out with respect to its location on the campus of the Nova Scotia Hospital and next to the Nova Scotia Hospital? And if there would have been any connotation implied there that you were moving them back into an institutional setting under the conditions that I see in the Nova Scotia Hospital location that I see very little difference. And I would have great concern that those individuals are located even in Simpson Hall on the campus of the Nova Scotia Hospital. Because in the 60s, Mr. Minister, you know, that's when we started deinstitutionalizing individuals in this province.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
There were a number of questions and comments in there. I would tell the member opposite that we did look at a range of potential locations that were brought forward by RRSS, and that this was a nurses' residence. It is not the Nova Scotia Hospital. I know that it was referred to earlier on as the Nova Scotia Hospital. That is not the case. It's a nurses' residence, and it seemed to have the basic necessities there that would best be able to accommodate the residents under these difficult circumstances. So I would just say that best efforts were made to find a suitable location, and this is the best one that was available under the circumstances while we all work through this difficult time.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the minister again. Minister, I believe that you did indicate that you actually visited the facilities at Simpson Hall and you saw the operation for yourself, and you've obviously had conversation with the providers, and you've spoken with some of the individuals who are now taking the place of the counselors and so on who are providing the support programs. I guess my question to you, Minister, when you were there, how many residents were